This is the Messerschmitt Bf-110 G-4, a German aircraft on the Italian line with a Hungarian paint scheme. The G-4 is a Tier 3 premium vehicle at BR 3.7 and is essentially a copy of the earlier Bf-110 G2, only with its Schrage Musik guns, radar and radar operator, setting it apart from this earlier variant. The internal armament of the G4 consists of 4 cannons. Firstly, a pair of Mk108 30mm cannons, one of which has 135 rounds, and the other of which has 120 rounds, although both share the same 660 round per minute fire rate. The other 2 cannons are then a pair of Mg151 20mm cannons, one with 350 rounds of ammunition and the other with 400 rounds, although again both of these guns do share the same fire rate, this time of 750 rounds per minute. Aside from the internally mounted cannons, the pilot can opt to equip a gun pod which will be mounted under the fuselage of the aircraft. This adds an additional 2 Mg151 20mm cannons with 100 rounds of ammunition each. The addition of this gun pod gives the 110 G4 6 forward-firing cannons, surely a formidable armament for the aircraft. Another interesting feature of the 110 G4 is actually another set of cannons, although this time they are not forward-firing. This time it's a pair of Mg151s that are mounted upwards with 240 rounds per gun. These guns do actually have their own sight system that can be switched over to using the Schrage Musik key binding. Aside from guns, the 110 also has options to take a variety of air-to-ground ordnance. Firstly, a variety of bombs are available. This ranges from a 1,000 kilogram bomb, 500 kilogram bombs, 250 kilogram bombs, and a large amount of 50 kilogram bombs. The aircraft then also has access to WFR GR-21 unguided rockets, of which up to 4 can be mounted. These payloads, alongside with the cannons, will make the 110 quite useful in the air support role in both naval and ground battles, and then just for general ground attack in air battles. Final piece of weaponry on the 110 is a defensive gunner. This consists of a pair of 7.92mm MG81 machine guns. 750 rounds are spread between the 2 guns, which have a fire rate of 1,600 rounds per minute. In the short time that I've owned this aircraft, this turret has got me out of sticky situations on a few occasions, so is certainly a useful feature to have access to. As far as flight performance, the Bf-110 seems to have good overall characteristics. The vehicle gets an interceptor spawn, which gives it a head start over most of the enemy fighter aircraft, and has a decent climb rate, which also allows it to get to a good altitude from which to engage enemy aircraft. However, the 110 is certainly not that maneuverable and does feel quite heavy. The 110 also seems to compress quite a bit at high speeds, so it is best to avoid high-speed dives. Overall, it's probably best to avoid turn fights with the 110, however it seems to excel when being used in a boom and zoom type playstyle. The aircraft also features a fair amount of armor around the cockpit and some of the critical components on the aircraft. This armor ranges from 6mm to 10.5mm, as well as a piece of 58mm thick bulletproof glass. The fuel tanks are also self-sealing, which alongside the armor makes the 110 quite a tough aircraft, being able to take a fair amount of damage and survive fires. A few other points of note for the 110 G4. The aircraft does of course feature a radar system. This is one of its distinguishing features and has a range of just over 3 miles or 5 kilometers. The radar does not support locking onto any targets, so only acts as a search radar. The aircraft of course features the same detailed cockpit model as all other Messerschmitt 110 variants currently in game. And finally, being a premium vehicle, the 110 G4 will also give boosted RP and SL gain during matches, certainly a benefit for anyone that's looking to grind up the Italian tech tree. So getting into our first game, we're of course in air realistic battles, and I started off with my interceptor spawn in this match, climbed up to altitude, and I'm well above most enemy fighters, although I do have someone contesting me at this altitude, that being this Mosquito. So I decided to go for the head-on. I'm feeling lucky, I've got the gun pod, so I have 6 cannons in the front of my aircraft, so I go in, do a gun run, and I only sustain minor damage, whereas his aircraft, yeah, a little bit more damage for him. So as I said, 6 guns, 4 Mg151 20mm cannons, and 2 Mk108 30mm cannons, all centrally mounted on my aircraft. Pretty easy to aim, and of course quite a lot of firepower there in the nose of my aircraft. So next we have a Spitfire. Seems to be tunnel visioning on a friendly 109, notices me coming in, but by that point it's too late. He's going quite slowly, not really much he can do to evade my guns. So that's another kill there, fairly easy one, and you will find when you're flying this aircraft there are some really good opportunities where there's a distracted enemy who is just tunnel visioning on a single friendly fighter aircraft or a bomber, that you can just go in, you can get really close and get in a great position without them even noticing, and it's just easy pickings. Typhoon, you know, he was being engaged by a friendly fighter. He was kind of just engaged in that dogfight, but he noticed me, he came for the head-on, but it was just a case of me having far superior firepower and being able to take him down. I think I did take a small hit from him there, but it was really nothing fatal. So I then returned to base, still had fuel, still had plenty of ammunition, but I thought why not go and just repair my aircraft. So by the time I got back in the air, the situation wasn't looking so good. There were two enemy fighters, a Corsair and a Spitfire, and then on my team it was me in the 110, a Heinkel 111 and a Stuka. So I critical the Corsair. I tried to turn onto him, but obviously, as said, it's not a very maneuverable aircraft, so I couldn't really do much. I tried switching over to the Schrage Musik guns to try and get a good shot as he was turning, although I couldn't quite get the aircraft lined up. And by that point, I had mucked up. I had put myself in a really bad situation. I had essentially just dropped a lot of energy trying to turn onto that Corsair to finish him, and I had let the Spitfire get onto my tail, and then he went below my tail. Now that's not good because you don't have a gunner on the underside. The gun essentially has no depression for that rear gunner. So you need the enemy target to be above you, otherwise you're not going to be able to hit them. So I go into a dive. I'm trying just to keep this guy within my gunner's sights, essentially. And I get really lucky. I critical his aircraft, and then I kill him. So the Spitfire's done. There's one enemy left. It's the Corsair, who I've already got a critical hit on. And as soon as I hit him, he seemingly started to go back to base, so I'm assuming I damaged his engine pretty badly. He then eventually goes for a head-on once I get close, and, you know, he does damage me a fair bit. But I set him on fire. I've lost an engine, and while this thing is not so good on a single engine, it's good enough to fly. It will still fly on a single engine, so that is not a problem. And, you know, I continue to fly, and then that just leads to the end of the game. That was my 5th kill of this game. Overall, a pretty nice match for the 110. So getting into our second game, and straight away demonstrating something that I mentioned previously, that being locking up at high speeds. As you can see, going pretty quick, and yeah, doesn't exactly like to pull up. Thankfully I have the altitude to do so, but you do definitely want to be careful with that. Straight out of the dive, into a head-on with a P-51, fire my shots, turn out, miraculously don't get hit whatsoever. Him on the other hand, yeah, he's going to be going back to the hangar. P-39N on my tail. That thing, it's dangerous. It's got a 37mm cannon, so at this point I know that he's probably going to kill me. He is faster than me. He is not more overall firepower, but he has enough to do some critical damage pretty quickly, of which he does. Yeah, I'm on fire, but don't worry, this thing is self-sealing fuel tank, so that fire's going to go out. I have, though, lost an engine, which, as said previously, it's not really enough to fly in combat with a single engine, but it will continue to fly. So you can keep the thing in the air, but it's not exactly going to be a fun time. But as I'm doing that, an F6F comes towards me, fires some initial shots. He smartly gets out the way, but I'm able to push negative and blow his wing off, giving me a second kill. And then an MB-175 comes steaming in, two 20mm cannons on that, so I do want to be careful. And I get a pilot snipe. Double kill. Yay. Now I do continue to fly back to the airfield. I was really hoping I would get back on a single engine, critical damage, missing one of my gear legs, do a belly landing, but unfortunately a P-51 had to come and ruin all the fun. As I was flying back, this P-51 came swooping in, set me on fire for a second time, and just crippled my aircraft so much that it just didn't want to fly. I did get a critical hit, although that never led to a kill. But it's fair to say that was the end for my 110 in that match. Overall, the BF-110 G-4 is a fun little aircraft, although for newer players I do think that the Italian Spitfire or the Hungarian BF-109 would be smarter choices, as those two aircraft are a bit more user-friendly. And then out of those two, personally, I would have gone for the Italian Spitfire, as that aircraft is a bit cheaper. The Hungarian 109 is, a little bit expensive for a tier 3 premium aircraft. Although personally, I decided to pick this aircraft up and fly it out a bit after its release, and I must say I was pleasantly surprised. I've never really flown the BF-110 series all that much, so the performance in a few aspects was actually considerably better than I was anticipating, especially the climb rate and the performance of the pilot-controlled guns. Those were two aspects of the aircraft that performed way better than I was expecting. The climb rate may not be god tier, but it is certainly good enough to outclimb many of the enemy fighters you will encounter, and the guns, obviously as you saw, are crazy effective just due to their pure firepower. While the paint scheme on the aircraft is rather empty, it does resemble a modern low visibility camouflage, which I do think looks rather cool. I will certainly be throwing this aircraft onto my Italian 3.7 naval lineup, and then maybe also my Italian 3.7 tank lineup, as I am confident that it will prove to be a capable air support vehicle in those respective game modes. Anyways, that's going to be it from me. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and found it helpful. If you did enjoy, please consider dropping a like on the video, and if you wish to see more content such as this, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.